Good morning. Good morning. I'm Acting Mayor Patrick Keefe, and I welcome you to Revere this beautiful day on the Charles McMacken Legion Memorial Lawn. Joined with me today is Veteran Service Officer Mark Silvestri, also City Councilor, City Councilor Stephen Morabito, Vice Mayor of Cambridge, Mrs. Mellon, and other dignitaries. Of course, Representative Congresswoman Katherine Clark. As a mayor and municipal leader, we all know the importance of a balanced budget. So I can't fathom why our government would want to default on its own debt. The impacts would be devastating to communities like Revere, communities across our Commonwealth, and communities across our country. This is why I'm so grateful to have leadership in DC, strong leaders like Katherine Clark, our Congresswoman. Congresswoman Clark will be down in DC fighting for us to make sure this nightmare does not become reality. I'm so grateful for your friendship. So at this point in time, I'd like to introduce our friend, my neighbor, and our Congresswoman, Democratic Whip, Madam Clark.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor Keefe. House Republicans have brought us here today at the edge of catastrophe. We are days from a MAGA default that would devastate families in Revere, across the Commonwealth, and across the country. Days from higher mortgage payments, days from gutted retirement accounts, 8 million jobs we are on the verge of losing. But even as we face that unprecedented calamity, Republicans have decided to send Congress home. They want to ignore this crisis all weekend, just put it out of their minds. But you know who cannot ignore it? The single mom who doesn't know if her SNAP benefits will be there next month. The senior who doesn't know if his Social Security check will come through. The soldier on deployment that doesn't know if her pay will be cut off. The veteran who's spending Memorial Day facing the threat of a VA shutdown. The Bay Staters wondering if it's their job on the chopping block. Lives and livelihoods are on the line because MAGA Republicans have chosen to use the American people as a bargaining chip. They openly admit it. They have taken America hostage. Not the White House, not Congress, not Democrats, the American people, our veterans, our teachers, our families, our seniors, the hungry, the sick. It's everyday people who are on the hook for the Republicans' recklessness. They want the American people to make the impossible choice, accept devastating cuts or suffer a devastating default. The truth is, it's Republicans who need to make a choice. Will they choose to be patriots this Memorial Day? Will they choose to put our heroes first? Will they choose to put our families, seniors, and communities over politics? Or will they send us over the cliff? It only takes 5 Republicans, only 5, to join the House Democrats and avert disaster. Just 5 Republicans to choose their country over ideology. And this weekend, the American people are standing up, speaking out, and calling on the House GOP to find their moral compass, find their patriotism, read their job description, and bring this crisis to an end. And today, we are joined by a few of those who are speaking out, a few of our neighbors who would feel the impact of a MAGA default firsthand. First, I am so proud to introduce Mark Silvestri, who served our country in the United States Army. Now, as director of Revere's Veteran Service Office, he is serving other Bay Staters who have worn the uniform. He'll be sharing his thoughts on what the default would mean for the heroes that he works with every day. Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Congresswoman, and thank you all for being here on a Memorial Day weekend when we could be on vacation. It's a tough weekend to be in the military when you have friends that never made it back. Gold Star families preparing for the Memorial Day holiday, and you're wondering if food will be put on the table on June 1st, or if your paycheck's going to hit. And I was in the military in 2010 when that happened. And when that happens and you're in service, you don't have a nest egg to fall back on. You don't have services to go out and get immediately. It's kind of to scrambling and scrapping together what you can get. And the people that defend our country and wear a flag, I don't think need to be the political football any longer. And we have Gold Star mothers, wives, families, children on this weekend. And instead of remembering the service, the honor and prestige that their loved one went to war or combat with, they're worrying if they're going to be able to feed their kids, if they're going to put gas in their tank. And I think that's an issue that needs to end. Watching the news this weekend, this past week, I seen that the Republican Congress was excited to have canceled their upcoming baseball practice on Wednesday and Thursday, and that was disappointing. If you're elected to Congress, let's get there and get this done. Let's lift the ceiling. Let's get the debt ceiling lifted and make sure that our people are not stressing this holiday weekend. Let's put it together and make things happen. And I appreciate you, Congresswoman Clark, for bringing attention to this and not going home on this holiday weekend. And thank you for coming to Revere, and I greatly appreciate everything you do to keep this in the forefront. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so much, Mark. Next, we're going to hear from Michelle Irvin. Michelle is an ESL teacher at Revere High School, and she has some valuable insight into how default would impact our kids, our classrooms, and our community. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me to come. Thank you for coming. I've been an ESL educator for 25 years. Education is my passion. I firmly believe that education is the foundation for a better future. And a lot of people who hear that think I'm talking about the future of the students, which I am, but I'm also talking about the future of our society as a whole. I'm a public educator and I'm representing public educators because I believe in public schools. Public schools were created to better our future and they were made free so that people, everybody could access it. And so our founding fathers and the people who created free education realized how important it was. And so they decided to front the bill. But unfortunately, recent government people continue to find reasons to continue cutting the funding to education. And the effects are far and wide. I'm currently also the co-president of the Revere Teachers Association here in Revere, and we have about 700 members, and these are some issues that come up all the time when we get together. Huge is the teacher shortage. We already have a huge teacher shortage. When I first started 20 years ago, we could find competitive teachers. People wanted to be teachers. We could find highly qualified teachers, no problem. But there's a huge teacher shortage. It's largest I've seen in my 25 years, and it's at a tipping point. The profession is at a tipping point, and namely because we have a lack of resources from all of these budget cuts. Overcrowded classrooms, low salaries, and lack of resources. There are also many jobs and professions that don't require the education that a teacher does, have less stress, make more money. People say, go do that. That's what's happening. We don't have teachers now because people are taking those jobs. Teachers are burnt out. And when they're burnt out, what does that leave society with? Remember that education is the foundation for a better future. So if you don't have anyone to provide that high quality education, what's going to come of the future? If teachers are leaving in droves now, what's going to happen with these budget cuts? You're not going to pay them more money with less money. You're not going to give them more resources. So budget cuts are just going to exacerbate all of this stress. So one other thing I want to talk about is the overcrowded classrooms. Like thinking about this, with less money, you can't adequately, with all these teachers leaving and even less money, in all this stress, you're not going to have adequately staffed classrooms. So we already have classrooms with roughly 30 to 40 students in them. I've heard kindergarten classes with 40 students in them, not just in Revere. This is all over. So if you think about it, 30 students in a class in a 60-minute period, that's 2 minutes per student, and that's not counting the time that I have to teach the lesson. So that's about 1 minute per student per day. That's not enough to help each individual student get what they need. and to provide that high quality education. So we're losing teachers, and teachers don't want to become teachers because of all this stress, because of all these lack of resources. What's going to happen with these budget cuts? It's going to get even worse. We're not even getting people in the profession. In the last 10 years, the amount of teachers going through teacher courses has shrunk by 30%. Over 30% fewer teachers are being created, if you want to call it that. So our founding fathers knew the price, literally and figuratively, of education. Public schools were created to prepare people for democracy. So if our current government continues to cut funding year after year after year, and they continue right now, want to think about cutting our funding, what does that say how they feel about democracy and how they feel about our future as a society? Education is the foundation of a better future. Our city, our state, our country depends on public education. We need to remember to fully fund our schools. And I thank Congresswoman Clark for inviting me to come to this, and thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you, Michelle. Next, we are going to hear from Robert Cassant, who lives just down the road here in the city of Revere. And Robert's going to share a few thoughts on what a late Social Security check would mean for him. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Yeah, my name is Bob Casanta, and I'm 75 years old, and I live in public housing. I will be impacted on many levels. 6 weeks ago, I had a thyroidectomy for cancer, for a cancerous nodule on my thyroid. 2 weeks ago, I had a shoulder replacement. I get my care at the VA. I am also a very long-term HIV/AIDS survivor, over 40 years. I worked as a therapist in Northern California, mostly with AIDS patients and their families. I got burnt out. At 50, I took a job with American Airlines. No plug for them, they're assholes. So I live on Social Security and a teeny tiny pension that I got from 13 years at American Airlines. It was supposed to be the fun 50 years for me, but after 9/11, it was awful. But I stayed around because I wanted the flying benefit. So I will be impacted on many, many levels.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Thank you for sharing that. When Alana Mallon isn't busy being Cambridge's vice mayor, she is also helping lead the fight against hunger with Food for Free. She'll be sharing what a MAGA default would mean for health and food security of Massachusetts family. Thank you for joining us, Vice Mayor.
Good morning. My name is Alana Mallon, and I'm the Vice Mayor of Cambridge and the Community and Government Relations Director at Food for Free, a food access and food rescue organization. I want to thank Minority Whip Clark for her efforts in calling attention to what will happen to our most vulnerable residents if a deal is not reached and the debt limit that imposes cruel additional work requirements to our staff and TANF benefits. As you can clearly see, although the media has said that Congress is on break until June 5th, House Democrats are not taking a single day off in service to their constituents and the American people, and fighting to ensure that they do not go hungry as a result of the negotiations on the national debt ceiling. When House Republicans say they want to spend less, they mean funding for public housing, food assistance, our veterans, Medicaid, addiction support. They don't mean lowering Pentagon spending or tax increases on the wealthiest Americans or raising the corporate tax rate. They want to cut spending on the backs of our most vulnerable residents and community members. That's not just cruel, it's inhumane. Last year in Massachusetts, 1 million of our residents were enrolled in SNAP. That's 1 in 7 residents across the Commonwealth. With the COVID-era SNAP benefits expiring, food insecurity after the pandemic is not abating, it is increasing. We see evidence of this each and every day at Food for Free, and the desperation of the programs we serve across Eastern Massachusetts to increase the amount of food that we supply. In Cambridge, we are thought of as one of the wealthiest communities in the Commonwealth, but over 40% of our students are on free and reduced lunch. live in public housing, and need assistance. Minority Clark deeply understands that there are hungry families in every city and town across this Commonwealth, and that Republicans are playing hard and fast with people's lives using political theater that will affect millions of people's livelihoods and their ability to feed their families. The additional proposed work requirements to SNAP, including moving the requirement from age 49 to 55, will jeopardize the food benefits of 15,000 Massachusetts residents and 1 million people nationwide. These are seniors, they're veterans, they're families in our community, and children in our public schools. The Republicans are not the party of the working class or the middle class, and they're showing their true colors with these negotiations. Again, I want to thank Minority Whip Clark and the other members of the Massachusetts congressional delegation for their commitment to the American people and to those who will be most affected by these cuts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. And I also want to acknowledge that we have with us today Catalina Lopez Aspina from Project Bread, who is also here in support and remembering what default would mean for Project Bread's clients and for hungry people across the Commonwealth. And with that, I'd open it up to questions. Absolutely. As we edge this cliff of disaster for American families, we are calling on 5 Republicans to step forward, be patriotic, make sure that we have teachers in our classrooms, that we're taking care of our veterans, that we are feeding the hungry in our communities. These are the choices they have put out. A default, taking our entire economy and perhaps a global recession, or devastating cuts to families. So we're asking that 5 of them come forward, do the right thing, and avoid this crisis for families at home. That is up to them. But what we have seen is not heartening. What we've seen is a GOP that is being led by extremists, whether that is starting with reproductive justice for women to attacking our veterans on Memorial Day weekend, that anxiety that Mark talked about for our veterans. I don't know how they're going home and looking their veterans in the eye when this is how they propose to avoid a manufactured crisis by putting the American people at the center of it. It is a buffet of bad choices they have put before us, and we think that 5 of them should be able to do their job and do the right thing. You know, we trust President Biden in this negotiation, and he has shown his leadership. Let's not forget, he put out a budget back in early March, on March 9th, that not only made investments in the American people, in American business, in a sustainable future, but also cut the deficit by $3 trillion. We are still waiting from a budget from the MAGA Republicans. But what we did see was their plan. And what was it a roadmap of? Devastation. Devastation. Families shouldn't have to choose whether they are going to have kids in a classroom or whether the parents are going to have a job. But that's the choice that they are forcing upon us. We know that the White House is being responsible. They are being the adults in the room. They are trying to avoid default and also avoid these catastrophic cuts. And so we are behind them in trying to fight for American families with everything that they have. I think that has remained a tool, but it is also not without risk. And what we have is a situation where the Republican extremists are just creating a crisis for the American people. And you look at our security around the world, there's so much talk about our competitiveness with China. And that has been a focus of this GOP majority. Yet at the same time, they are willing to hand China and Russia a manufactured crisis that could put our full faith and credit at risk. And who's going to foot the bill? It's going to be the American people. That's who's going to foot the bill. And we know that they understand what this is about because in the Trump administration, where $8 trillion of deficit was added to the deficit in just 4 short years under Donald Trump, 3 times the GOP raised the debt ceiling with no strings attached. This is pure politics over people. Thank you.